Hey guys, Brittany with the Scott Life. We just want to give you the rundown on Harvest Host. It is a yearly membership for RVers to park overnight at places such as wineries, breweries, farms, museums, and more. So the idea is to go ahead and park for free, but then in return you do support the business that you're staying at. So if you stay at a farm, you want to go ahead and support that farm by buying different vegetables, honey, eggs, things like that. If you're staying at a brewery, you want to buy their beer. Winery, buy a bottle of their wine to take with you. So now that we've been on the road since January, the route that we've taken hasn't really allowed us to utilize Harvest Host until now. So we used our membership through Escapees to go ahead and receive a 20% discount on Harvest Host membership, which is $80 for the entire year. And that is the classic plan. That gives you access to over 875 locations across the United States. But recently they've added on a golf plan as well. And so this is a little bit more at $120 a year, but you do have access to over 1,200 locations. We personally are not golfers, so we went ahead and stuck with that classic plan.
Alright, some rules and notes to be aware of with Harvest Host. The first one is to always call ahead just to arrange your visit, just to make sure that the slip's open, they don't have too many people. Next one is to support the host. That's one of the biggest things I think that Harvest Host tries to push along, is to, even if it's $20 purchase, if it's a brewery, just buy a case of beer, buy a bottle of wine, whatever it is.
And that's kind of the recommended too, is that $20 is kind of the recommended amount to support that place.
Yep, not a rule, not a requirement, but very much recommended just to help out the host. Next one is, these are all dry camping kind of setups. Some of them might have electricity, some might have water, but it is absolutely not expected. Next one is 80% or so of the sites can fit any size RV. Again, that's kind of part of when you call ahead, is just to check and make sure they can fit your size, but most of them can fit anybody. Next one, don't arrive after hours. So generally speaking, business hours 9 to 5, just try to arrive within that window. Alright, next one is to not stay longer than 24 hours. Just cut and dry, 24 hours is as long as you can stay on site. Next one, be courteous. Don't run your generator for too long. Don't run it too late. Don't kick it off at 5 in the morning, anything like that. And the last one is no tents. You have to be like a self-contained full setup of having your own bathroom, your own kitchen, just so you're not running in and using the restaurant or the brewery or anything.
More than likely, it's going to be most comparable to a boondocking site.
Yep.
You may get lucky, and some locations may have some hookups, but expect that it's basically going to be a boondocking site.
Yep, dry camping all the way.
So we were traveling from Ontario to Badlands in South Dakota, and we found ourselves just looking for a quick stop along the way. And so we found Round Lake Vineyards and Winery in Round Lake, Minnesota. And let me tell you, this place was definitely a hidden gem. We would never have stopped otherwise, because we are really not wine people. But the property, the overall setup, it was just a dream. The long driveway in had vineyards lining both ways. There was the lake when you first pulled in on the left-hand side, with a beautiful event space where there was a wedding being set up. On the right side you had the restaurant, bistro area, and then there were some horses hanging out over there. And so the overall space was just absolutely beautiful. And we had a basically free site just hanging out right next to the lake, so that was really cool. We decided to go ahead and support the winery for our stay by sharing an appetizer at the restaurant. We did a little bit of a wine tasting. And the food and the wine was all delicious. Yeah. We were actually quite surprised at how good we enjoyed it, and ended up actually even buying a bottle of wine, which is big for us because, again, we're not wine drinkers. And we brought that back on the road. So we really enjoyed our time at our very first Harvest Host experience.
Alright, this brings us to what we could see as the advantages and disadvantages of Harvest Host following just our first experience. So on the advantages side, I think the first one is that it can be educational. So depending on where you're going, especially like if it was a museum or a winery or anything like that, a lot of them are willing to give you a little short and sweet tour, kind of check out the ground, see what it's all about. So I think that part of it's really cool. It's not just overall, to stay at a camp.
And overall, the people that are hosting these campers, they genuinely want you there. And they're very excited to show off their space and what they do. And so if you are homeschooling, they're excited to kind of show the inside of how farming works and how different things work. So definitely can be educational, because one of the other advantages is that the people are very friendly. They genuinely want you there.
Yeah, I think a big part of it too is that the hosts themselves don't get paid. There's no money on their behalf. So by bringing in somebody like us, I mean, they're hosting this property because they want to, right? I mean, there's no monetary advantage for them.
Other than that little bit of support,
yeah,
but yeah.
I think one of the other big ones is just like how gorgeous some of the properties are. You know, it's not every day that you get to stay at a beautiful vineyard for a campground. I mean, that's just unheard of. So being able to see some of the properties that we do or can is really cool in my mind.
And I know a couple of families that have stayed at some really, really cool farms. And especially having a young daughter, that is something that would be a highlight to go and stay for a night and kind of a special treat. So
I know Lily loved the horses, even at Round Lake.
Yep.
What else?
So one thing that you could say is Harvest Host is kind of the opposite of what you're trying to intend it to be, in the sense of the goal is for it to be a free night to stay somewhere. Yes, you are spending the $80 for the year, but so minimal if you can use this a handful of times. But you are going ahead and supporting them by purchasing something from their establishment. So sometimes it can be pricier than a campground, but the cool thing is you're walking away from it with something. So you have something in hand, and also you're supporting a small business. So even though it could potentially add up and be a little more than an actual campground night would be, you at least are getting something out of it. So that is one advantage.
I know on ours first day even, I mean, we probably spent maybe 40, 45 between our food, drinks, and a bottle of wine. But again, at least you walk away with a bottle of wine. You don't just spend the money to stay at a campground and leave the next morning.
And then a couple weeks later, we were able to open that bottle of wine with friends and enjoy it. So that was really neat to be able to do that. But that kind of leads to the disadvantages. The same concept is that easily that stay can be more expensive than a campground. For us, we try to average about $25 a night. And so that $40 is actually pretty expensive for us. But again, we're kind of getting a meal and a little bit of a treat out of it. So advantage and a disadvantage on both ends.
I think the other ones would be, depending on the regions, I felt like there's a bit more locations to the east side, or at least like central US and east. So some of the parts that we've been in, it's been hard to find one. So it can just be a little bit scarce depending on where you're at.
And then also in the sense of disadvantages, some could see a lot of times the goal of Harvest Host is kind of a passing through kind of alternative, but you are only able to stay for a single night at a time. So for someone who's going to an area that is hoping to stay for 2, 3, 4 nights, you don't have that option available. I guess unless there were multiple Harvest Hosts in that region, and then you kind of bumped around for every evening. But that obviously isn't the most ideal situation. So disadvantage, that you do only have a 24-hour limit at that one location. And then finally is, as we've said before with Harvest Host, the overall setup is boondocking. So if you're dry camping. So if you are not familiar with it, you don't feel comfortable with it, you're probably not going to enjoy being at a Harvest Host. But again, there are some that you might get lucky and have some hookups. But that is one thing that we could see some people would see as a disadvantage, is that you are fully boondocking at these sites.
Yep. All right. Overall, we give Harvest Host an absolute 2 thumbs up, because you just get to scope out hidden gems that you would have passed by otherwise. The overall concept is wonderful, kind of a win-win for both parties. So we definitely look forward to our next chance to stay.
So if you are interested in joining Harvest Host and getting a membership, just simply comment below, "I want a discount," and we will send you a code for savings so you can enjoy Harvest Host as much as we have.